Dear Lord, thank you for putting us in this building to do your work and your service. Thank you for the opportunity to legislate on matters of public importance and to hear the input that we need to have the wisdom to make good decisions. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Thank you. Chairman Robertson, you had wanted to speak. You want to speak from the microphone there?
I can, Mr. Chairman. It's microphone number one. First of all, I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me this opportunity. This is a committee, as you know, that I chaired for the last 2 years, and it's an extremely important committee inside this building that I think sometimes, because of the legislation being a 2-year process, we sometimes forget that the impact that the legislation that moves this committee has, not only on our state budget, but also on the thousands and thousands of men and women who depend on this committee to make the decisions that determine the quality of life that they have here in the state of Georgia. And I'm excited that you're chairing this committee. I know you have that same servant's heart that I think is required to walk through this type of legislation. And my dear friend, Chairman Larry Walker, and I have attempted to do some things to really change the shape of things. So the only reason I wanted to come here is I know, and I've got good friends in the room, that there will be important groups that come before this committee, and they will talk about law enforcement needing pay and retirement benefits. And they will talk about classroom teachers needing additional pay and retirement benefits. And they'll talk about general government employees needing those same things. But through the work that we did, that Chairman Walker continues to do, I just want to hand each committee member a token of a reminder that our responsibility is to those sometimes we don't see. And they are just as important as those other individuals that we talked about. And I just want to give these to the committee members, and then I will get out of y'all's way. And thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to do this.
Thank you, sir.
Is it gas, gasoline, or electric?
If you back it up a
Okay.
little bit, it
Okay.
runs on a system in there that will
This is the new thing, okay.
That's solar panels on the roof, I
Solar
believe.
panel on it?
That's right, but please, remember these folks that do those kind of jobs. That includes our cafeteria workers, our maintenance workers, and our custodians at our public schools throughout the state of Georgia. Thank you again, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's very kind of you, and we all appreciate it very much. Thank you. So we'll now call our meeting to order. February 16th, 2023, our Senate Committee on Retirement. Senator Albers, you're going to present to us Senate Bill 128, and we'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you allowing me to be a few minutes late coming from press conference, and I appreciate the members of this committee. This is a relatively simple bill, but it will be very meaningful to our law enforcement heroes, the finest of Georgia. We have the Police Officer Annuity Benefit Fund, POAB as we like to call it, that allows all of our post-certified police officers to participate by them funding it through monthly contributions, as well as dollars we collect from both fees and fines through the court systems. It's a hugely successful program, and in a time and day where we're constantly looking to recruit and retain our best and brightest in the field of law enforcement, this is a great tool to help. This simply allows the manager of the pension fund, led by no stranger to this Capitol building, Homer Bryson, who's played numerous leadership roles, the ability to have up to 15% of that fund be invested in alternative investments outside of the traditional stock market, which has done much, much better over the last many years, and I wish I had done much better in my own stock portfolio, Mr. Chairman, over the last year. But this is a very wise and measured approach, and I believe it's the right thing for us to do for the health and growth of the fund, and I would yield to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any member have a question? Mr. Vice Chairman?
Senator, define for us the alternative investment that you're talking about here. There's not a definition that I saw within the bill. It's a term that's used in a lot of ways. Can you define that for us a little bit?
Certainly, yes. So alternative investments, and I should have mentioned this earlier, really started being pioneered by the firefighter pension fund. They were the first to utilize that with great success, and many others have now copied and mimicked that. In fact, I've seen Morgan back there, who has helped lead that fund to great success. But alternative investments typically fall out of what we would call the traditional stocks and bonds. Could be type of venture funds or other investments that are outside of what you would typically work with your broker, right, where you might be managing your 401k and things of that nature.
Anyone else have any questions? Number 9. Yes, sir.
9, yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator. We've heard testimony in previous meetings from TRS and ERS that they have experienced improved returns on the alternative investments. And I think that we heard a comment, we wish they had that option earlier, sooner. So I think there is certainly merit to this. My question for you, and you're happy to refer it to somebody else if you'd like, but the 15% of the plan assets, whereas we have 5% limitation on the TRS and ERS, does that concern you? Usually when you have higher returns, there's higher risk. Would you speak to that, why you want 15% and rather a more conservative 5 or 10%?
Yeah, and that's a great question, Senator. And I think, I've been here for a long time now, maybe close to Senator Davenport. And I remember when we first changed the firefighter pension fund to make it 5%. And we actually got a significant amount of pushback where ERS and TRS were fearful of that. In fact, there was a pretty substantial lobbying effort at that time that don't do that to us. This is, crazy hocus pocus type stuff. What we found is the returns were so much greater and so much better that over time we started increasing that in other pension funds, and eventually ERS and TRS came on board with that. I'm glad they did. So they were a little bit behind. However, I think 15%, if you look at a maturity model for an investment based on the risk profile, I think is actually probably still a little bit low. I'd probably, based on the fund and the size, what they're doing, think 20 or 25% makes more sense, but I think a 15% incremental move is the right one.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Yes, sir, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, just offering at some appropriate time to make a motion.
Okay. Any other members have any questions? Now would be the proper time.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I would move that this bill do pass.
And we're working on LC 432610 is the bill number. Senate Bill 128. Everybody agree? That's the, okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Senator McLaren, seconded by Senator Harbin. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So carry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, members. Have a great day.
Senator Walker, would you like to present yours? Do you want to do it here? Would you want to go to the table, wherever you're comfortable?
I'm okay here if you are.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. So I bring to you today Senate Bill 105, LC 432600. Senator Robertson, and before we gavelled in, spoke more eloquently than I can about this issue, but he and I were at a hearing when he was still chairman of this committee in Columbus, and we heard from our school bus drivers, our custodians, our cafeteria workers, our maintenance workers, with really a plea to help them on their retirement plan. And just to give the members of the committee that weren't there a little background, they are in the PSERS retirement plan, Public School Employee Retirement System. The state fully funds this plan. There's no contribution to the plan from the local school districts. It's 100% funded by the state. The school systems do, however, provide them with health insurance. And I think years ago, a lot of people signed up to be a bus driver or cafeteria worker to get the health insurance more than anything else. These are not highly compensated positions. The retirement plan, as you'll see, is super meager. The health insurance is a nice benefit, but as times have changed and we heard testimony, many of these people, this is their primary occupation. And the school bus drivers, for example, not only bring the children to and from school, they also are taking them on field trips or athletic events and have to do second and third runs to pick up other children. So it's a lot of it is, you know, they're working sometimes 6, 7, 8 hours a day. Most of them we heard from also have second jobs too. So they're working very hard. And if you think about it, these I think are essential workers that, as Chairman Robertson mentioned, are really kind of behind the scenes, don't get a lot of accolades, but our schools would not function without them. Our children would not be safe without them. And the nutrition is so important. I mean, a hungry child, you can't teach a hungry child. They're not going to absorb what's taught in the classroom. So it's a very critical component of our education system. And currently, the retirement plan that they're on is a $16 multiplier. So for every year of service, they get $16 times that years of service per month for their retirement. It takes 10 years to vest into this program. So a person that vests after 10 years, if they were to retire, their retirement benefit would be $160 a month. A 30-year employee dedicated their career to this and to our children would get $480 a month. I mean, it's just really, really, really low. Current statute has a floor of $16.50 a month as the multiplier, $16.50. But they're currently only getting $16. So we have a floor, but the appropriations and the fund balance really dictates what they actually receive. So they're currently receiving $16 multiplier. There's in current statute a ceiling on it of $25. No, excuse me. Is that right? Hold on a second. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think it is $25. To me, since what they receive is determined by state appropriations, I don't see any real logic in having a ceiling on it. So my bill, which is a fiscal bill, which means it'll have to be actuarially studied and we can't actually fully pass it this session, it'll be held over to next session. But my proposal this afternoon is to increase the floor multiplier to $17 and to remove the ceiling altogether. Yes, sir.
Okay, Senator Harvin.
Senator Walker, thank you. just reading through the analysis, is my understanding we're gonna raise benefits, but the funding mechanism, as I'm reading here, looking at the analysis, it says if the General Assembly fails to appropriate enough funds to fully fund the maximum benefit allowable, then the benefit will be reduced pro rata based upon the amount actually appropriated, no less than $14.75. So there's a provision or a safety net in here that if we did not have adequate funding, their benefit could reduce back down to the $14.75 is what I'm reading here. Am I correct?
That's my understanding, but I'm proposing that we change the $14.75 to $17.
Okay.
And this would be for existing retirees and future retirees.
And I'm just reading this, that says if, and I think if the General Assembly fails to appropriate, and all the funding for this, as I understand it, is done through the General Assembly. So the funding is that, but if they did fail, they're saying, I'm assuming this $14.75 is the minimum that it would go. Is that, I don't know if I'm understanding that right or not.
If Mr. Potvin would help me out, I would appreciate it.
Hit your button.
And I think I may have misspoken about the $25 too. If you'll just, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
That's all right. That's quite all right.
Thank you, Senator. Okay, so to correct on the 25, so the current ceiling is actually 1650.
Right.
So we would be raising the floor from the 1475 up to 17 and getting rid of the ceiling entirely. So that would leave future potential increases to the actual multiplier in the hands of the General Assembly through the funding mechanism that Senator Walker's been talking about. To answer your question, so the appropriation that we get each year is in payment of what we call the actuarially determined contribution mandated by the actuarial valuation. And of course that goes into the trust fund, which is currently well in excess of 80% funded.
Yeah.
So theoretically, your answer is correct. The benefit could be reduced down to this floor multiplier, whatever, 1475 or 17, wherever it lands. But I would be, I don't think that would happen if you missed a single payment, because the trust fund is still there and it would still have some kind of a buffer for that. So we've never come close to testing this, so I can't give you, here's what would happen and when it would happen. But technically speaking, you are correct that there is a safety net provision.
If the General Assembly chose not to, it'd have to be something, and when you say 80% funded, it's 80% funded because we're putting money each year and of course receiving some type of return as well. That 80% how is that percentage arrived at?
The 80%, well, it's 83, I believe is the actual number. And that's a snapshot as of the most recent actuarial evaluation date,
Right.
June 30, 2021. So at that moment, it doesn't take into account future. It's just where we stand at that point. The funding ratio is the ratio of the assets of the plan to the liabilities that are calculated by the actuaries. And what they do then is they will set future contribution requirements in accordance with the funding plan of the system, which is an effort to bring the system up to 100% funded. That's the ultimate goal.
Right.
So to the extent that there's a shortfall, we have to pay that down each year, and it can fluctuate based on investment returns and all of that.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir.
If I may, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Potvin, you gave us a system snapshot at a prior meeting, and as of June 30, 21, PSERS was funded at 86.3% based on this handout, as compared to ERS at the same time was at 71.6. So it appears to me, after talking with you and looking at this, that it's a fairly healthy funding level for this program. And in fact, I would urge you and suggest that, we might could go ahead and move to the 1650 multiplier that's in statute.
So I have seen references in appropriations, the budget books. Can't remember if it was the House or the Senate side, but I know I have seen a recommendation to do that very thing, to move it to 1650 this year in anticipation of potentially going to 17 next year.
Thank you.
Is that all?
Yes,
Anyone else have any questions for the author or for Mr. Botton? Okay, so this is a fiscal bill, so no action can be taken. So what we'll do is schedule another hearing on this bill a couple of weeks from now. Find out what the House's position, if they've asked for an actuary on it. Do you have someone carrying this bill in the House?
No, sir, not yet. I'll work on that.
Okay. All right, but we'll look and see, figure out what we need to do to get an actuary on it then. Okay, thank you. Was there anyone else that wanted to speak on that bill? If you would, come to the front. Let's see. That's Senate Bill 105. We had Lisa Morgan. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Good afternoon. I am Lisa Morgan. I'm the president of the Georgia Association of Educators and a kindergarten teacher. Thank you, Chairman Williams, for having this hearing today, and thank you, Chairman Walker, for carrying this bill. Our members are very concerned about the public school employees' retirement system. And first, I would like to let you know, as I let them know, when I say educator, I am referring not only to those classroom teachers, but also to the people who make learning possible, our education support professionals, our ESPs, our school bus drivers who safely bring students to and from school, our cafeteria workers who provide nutrition and fuel for our children, the custodians who keep our schools safe and clean, and the maintenance personnel who keep everything running smoothly. GAE represents thousands of these men and women in every part of our state, and they are with our students each and every day. We've seen how they work overtime, extra time. They've delivered meals to families, sanitized our school. They go far beyond their job descriptions each and every day. Pay for these educators has never been very good, and unfortunately, neither are the benefits. After 30 years, currently, a bus driver or cafeteria worker will receive less than $500 in a monthly retirement benefit, and only after they reach 65 years of age. PSERS was established in 1970. It was established as a supplemental program. But even as a supplemental plan, the benefits are woefully inadequate and presume other retirement and pension plans that most of these employees cannot afford. For most of our ESPs, PSERS is not a supplemental, but in fact, their primary source of income for retirement. The average monthly pension for current retirees under this system is $290. Take a moment and think about that. How can you live on $290 a month? These educators deserve to retire with dignity and appreciation for the valuable role they play in educating the 1.8 million public school students in Georgia. I ask you to please move this bill forward, have the actuarial study, and let's begin to improve the retirement for these valuable employees. I have met these employees all across the state, and I cannot tell you how many times it happened in my own school. Miss Etal, we all loved Miss Etal. She was in the cafeteria. She greeted our children with a smile each and every day. She retired, and we held a big celebration because Miss Etal was finally retiring. She was almost 80. Less than 6 months after she retired, Miss Etal was back in our cafeteria because she simply could not survive on these benefits. Ask you to please consider these employees, and let's improve the benefits and show the value, because they provide value for our students each and every day. Thank you.
Hi,
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here today. You know, a lot of times when a favorable bill is about to move, the committee's like, good, we got to figure it out, move, do, pass, all that stuff, and we don't always get to reflect on the stories that really animate what we're doing and why. It's heavy stuff, and it's hard to hear, and I think it's so critical that you share that story, even to a favorable committee, because I think part of the issue we're having with the disconnect is that we don't talk about this enough. And for us to make continued progress, we got to hold these stories on our hearts. So thank you for telling us about the story that you did, and I appreciate your testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would mention, we did ask some of our members who are bus drivers and cafeteria workers who are in the metro area if they could come today. And each and every one of them said to me, I would love to be there, but I can't miss work. You know, I had one say, my system is giving a perfect attendance bonus this year, and I can't afford not to receive that bonus. So that's why I am trying to speak for them. But please know that they are watching us and they are appreciative of your efforts.
Thank you very much, and
Thank
we
you.
do appreciate them and their work that they do. They are very valuable. They are.
Thank you. Thank you.
Karen Solom.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to come in front of a favorable committee. I was a 30-year classroom teacher, high school English and drama, and I didn't know about PSERS until just recently. I'm a member of TRS, having retired with 30 years of credit, so I'm one of the lucky ones. I get the 60% times my highest 24 months of salary, and then the COLAs, and I'm not asking you to take any of that away, but I am asking you to improve the benefit package for the custodians, the maintenance workers, the bus drivers, who are the heart of our school system. And if you've ever been in an education class, one of the things that you are taught is you do not tick off the school secretary and you do not tick off the custodian, because your room will not get cleaned for years during your employment. So as President Lisa Morgan from GAE said, we need to honor these people and to give them a dignified retirement so that when they're finally able to retire, they can, and not be forced into servitude until they are 80 years old. So I appreciate your consideration. Again, thank you for offering this, and I look forward to seeing the results of the actuarial study. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions of her? Thank you. Ms. Margaret? I won't attempt it. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Senator Walker for bringing this legislation. My name is Margaret Ciccarelli. I represent PAGE, the Professional Association of Georgia Educators, representing about 95,000 classroom teachers, administrators, and classified staff, including bus drivers, custodians, and the other hardworking PSERS members that y'all have been just discussing. And as Senator McLaurin indicated, it's important to hear those personal stories. I'm not going to share that today because we've already heard eloquently from others who have expressed that, but just wanted to talk a little bit about the student impact on what happens when we don't have enough of these classified staff serving members, or serving our students in schools. And so I'm going to focus on bus drivers, which seems appropriate because y'all have those lovely bus driver toys that Chairman Robertson has handed out to remind us all of the importance of school bus drivers. We surveyed our 95,000 members this fall about the impact of Georgia's ongoing bus driver shortage, and no doubt that shortage is not solely caused by low PSERS benefits. There are multiple contributing factors to that, including pay, difficulties during COVID, behavior on school buses, all kinds of things. But our teachers and classified staff report that 65% of them believe that bus driver shortage decreases students' academic time in school. And so when we think about boosting retirement benefits and making this a stable career for Georgia educators and classified staff, it has an impact not only on the individual educators, but most importantly on the students that they serve. So I just wanted to share that piece of data with you and encourage y'all when it's time to consider passing this on to actuary in conjunction with the House Retirement Committee. We encourage you to do so and appreciate the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions of Ms. Ciccarelli? Did I get it right?
Yes, sir.
Good. Thank you. Mr. Potvin, you had signed up. Did you wish to speak any more on or concerning this one?
I don't have any specific comments, just to say that I'm in full support of the legislation as it's currently drafted.
Thank you, sir. Chuck Frischman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here to speak for another bill, but I certainly would never oppose any benefits for our PRS colleagues and support them in this endeavor. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. So this bill will be turned over for an actuary, and we'll be hearing more about this one and schedule another hearing when we get those results. Thank you. At this time, I've got a bill to present, and I'm going to turn it over to my vice chairman. He'll take over, and I'll move to the table.
We're glad to have you today, Senator Williams, and welcome to the Senate. We're glad to have you.
Thank you, sir.
Hope you enjoy it over here. Who knows, you may want to stay.
I believe I will. Thank you.
All
I
right.
left the house in good hands.
I'm glad, and I'm glad to know that your house broke as well.
Yes,
So
sir.
that's a good thing. If you will, we'll ask you to present your bill.
Thank you, sir. This is Senate Bill 117, LC number 432550. This bill passed through committee last year, and it passed through the House last year and it just didn't get called up on sine die. Very simple bill, and this bill concerns the funeral business, funeral industry, funeral profession, not just me, but practically every funeral home in the state of Georgia. I've been asked by many funeral directors and just met with a number of them yesterday that were here to please bring this bill back. What this bill does, it authorizes ERS, like any death benefit, annuity, life insurance, fraternity, any of those type death benefit funds, to receive an assignment from the beneficiary through the funeral home. We would send to ERS. This notifies them that the beneficiary has assigned a portion of the life insurance to a funeral home to pay for funeral expenses. Basically, that's all it does. I'll be glad to answer any questions or if there's further explanation needed, but this is a common practice that families come into a funeral home to make funeral arrangements, and they don't have the money sitting in a bank account to write a check to the funeral home. They don't have a credit card with enough credit limit to pay for a funeral. But mother told them that she worked at the state hospital or for the state of Georgia, and she had a life insurance policy that would take care of her final expenses. What we find has happened, it takes ERS sometimes a couple of months or more before the final settlement is made. By then, the tear has left the eye. This money is a gift from God, and they go and don't come back to see the funeral home. So with the average cost of funerals between $8,500 and $12,000, a small business could lose 1 or 2 of these a year because of this, and there goes our profit for the entire year. And so you basically wound up working for nothing. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I'll be glad to ask any questions.
Okay. Senator Davenport, is that you, number 12, is that right?
That's right.
Okay, there you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bringing this back. I think we heard testimony last year from a couple of the representatives that were funeral directors.
Yes, ma'am.
And they had mentioned that all the people that they served, they knew the families, and they had been upstanding people in the community. They wanted them to have a decent burial. And they did that, kept doing that. And the families, for some reason, the money, and I think you just explained that, the money went to the check went to the family, and the funeral home was never paid.
That's right.
So now this bill will make sure that the money goes directly to the funeral home
Yes, ma'am.
and be covered.
Yes, ma'am. I don't know, I've seen benefits for some retired state employees average anywhere from 15,000 to, I think, around 70,000. And, you know, what this does not cost the state any additional money. It's just
Okay.
gonna be a simple bookkeeping process.
Okay.
Because what we instituted at our funeral homes, because we have so many retired state employees, we created a form that we faxed to ERS, notifying them that someone has died. That also lets them know, okay, their retirement may need to stop also.
Right.
But with that faxed notification, we could also send the assignment form, notarized, and a copy of the funeral bill. That way, the ERS would know here's a valid claim against that. So when they're keying in that we've been notified of this death, there is a claim against that total amount. So that's basically it in a nutshell, and this did pass out of committee in the House, I think, earlier this week, the
Okay.
same bill.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Senator McClung, did you have a? There you go. You're on.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I guess I was just seeing here that I voted for this on February 28th, 2022. So I guess, Mr. Chairman, you think it'd be appropriate for me to vote for it again, I guess?
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Any other questions? Pleasure of the committee.
If you're ready, I'd like to
We're ready.
move do pass.
Do pass from Senator Walker. Second from Senator Davenport. And any other questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Sir, it passes. You can go on if you can get through the rules, and you just have to watch that retirement chairman. He's really tough.
Yeah. Thank you. Did you wish to, I think Mr. Potvin wished to speak about the bill.
Bring him up to sit with you. You want to do that?
Sure.
I didn't see his list. Okay. No, okay. Okay, I didn't. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I think the water's under the bridge on this.
Water's
one.
under the bridge, but we'd like to know what you think. I'm sorry about that.
I appreciate the chairman for from remembering me, because he knows that I have a couple of important counterpoints to bring up. I think this is information that you needed before you made this vote. There are a couple of concerns that I have, and they fall into the clearly unintended consequence. The face of the bill is as simple as it has been described. But there's an important distinction between these life insurance benefits and the ones that we think of as, you know, sort of the common industry life insurance benefits. And that is that these benefits are not governed under Title 33. They're not part of the insurance code of the state of Georgia. They're part of the retirement code, Title 47. As such, they are considered retirement benefits. And whatever the name is, they're not considered insurance benefits. Okay? So there are two kind of retirement principles that apply here. Number one is the ability to not impair a contract that has been made with an employee. You guys are familiar with the ERS and the fact that it has multiple tiers, right? We have a tier that is currently in place that started in 2009 for new hires. Why is that? Because for people who are in the new plan, we couldn't change their benefits to a GSEPS style benefit, right? You can't impair the contract you made with those people when they were hired, so you can only do this for people who are hired in the future. Well, that impairment of contract applies here as well. The benefit that is promised to the beneficiary of the member and no one else. And so by allowing it to be assigned somewhere else, to me, you're impairing the benefit that is due to that beneficiary. What the beneficiary does with it once they have the money is their business and not that of ERS. The other point that I would make is that there is no case, with one exception, there are no cases where any retirement benefits under Title 47 are assignable at this time. The one exception is for criminal behavior. We've had a couple of instances where benefits have been garnished in settlement of a criminal complaint. But other than that, there are no cases like that. And that's for the protection, I think, of the members and the beneficiaries and the retirees. And we know the retirees are a relatively vulnerable population to things like scams and high pressure. My concern is this: if we open up an exception for an admittedly legitimate purpose, we present that as a possible exception to any number of other businesses that have equally legitimate purposes. Anybody who's a creditor could raise their hand and make the exact same request of us. And how can we decide that one form of business is legitimate for this purpose and another is not? And we know that some of these businesses, while they may be legal, are high pressure. They are, some of them I would describe as scams, whether that's fair or not. And I don't want my retiree population to be subject to that kind of pressure. We have people in our system today who are vested, who would rather take a refund of their benefits, refund of their contributions, a couple $1,000s today, rather than wait to receive a vested monthly benefit for life. A disastrous financial decision, but they make it. And I'm worried about other decisions that would be opened up here. None of this can happen under the text of the current bill. What I'm saying to you is we're setting a precedent here that I worry will be taken advantage of in the future. And again, I thank the chairman very much for allowing me to state my remarks.
I would say this, in reading this, it references group term insurance, which really is not group term insurance in the system. What you're saying, it is a retirement benefit that's there in lieu of insurance. Am I correct?
If you want me to get a little bit technical about it, the Gitley benefit program was created way back in like the 1960s at some point.
Yeah.
And the original trust fund that funded these benefits was actually a subset of the ERS trust fund.
Yeah.
It has since been broken out into its own plans, but those plans are still governed under Title 47 and we administer them. So in that way, they are different.
You've got some further questions, Senator McFarland?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Quickly, I guess I'll ask, when you say impaired contracts, I assume you're referring to a ex post facto constitutional type challenge that you can't retroactively impair a contract, right? That's the
correct.
idea.
Retirement benefits are considered to be unchangeable unless you provide another commensurate increase somewhere else.
Okay. So I guess my question is, do you have like a legal opinion on how this would actually impair the contract? Because the way I read it, it grants an option to the contractee, the beneficiary, to assign. So I get that that's a modification of, and this is getting super in the weeds, but modifying the contract and the contractual rights, but does it impair the contractual rights?
It impairs the contractual right, in my opinion. No, I do not have a formal legal opinion.
Okay.
So take this for what it's worth. But in my opinion, the contract that we make is with the member, right? In this case, the member is deceased, right? And has no say in this change.
Okay, so it would be and I genuinely wanted clarification. So it's the member is the contractee, and the beneficiary is actually the third party. It's the third party beneficiary essentially to the contract that would have the option to modify the relationship.
Yes, I would,
Okay.
I think, characterize it that way.
I think that's an interesting legal question, and it would be interesting to see if Ledge Council had an opinion about unconstitutionality, but absent that opinion, I would be okay.
I know that I am not able to get such an opinion from the AG's office because it's pending legislation. It's not actual law. So
Right.
it's either comes from Ledge Council or I won't be able to get any kind of legal.
Just wanted to understand and then subsequently commend you on an interesting legal question. Thank you.
I'm going to ask this question. Could someone prior to their death assign it? Then the person who owns that account could actually assign it rather than the beneficiary. That's a question I would have for you.
So I kicked around this as a potential solution to propose, and I've rejected it. The thought that I had was that you could make a funeral home a beneficiary. There's nothing that says it has to be a person that is a beneficiary.
Correct.
So let's say that I'm the member and I have part of my benefit going to a named beneficiary and another part goes to ABC Funeral Home. 10 years later, I pass away. My family has moved to another state. I've moved to another state. Now, ABC Funeral Home, which probably won't be providing the services, is getting the benefit, and the one that actually provided the service in that other state isn't. So it doesn't really work as a solution to this problem.
Unless the contract was there, much like we do in the banking industry where a bank has a loan, it says whatever the outstanding loan of the balance is due at the time. That's just another, but I think we've got some legal issues that need to be done. Senator Davenport, I see you were blinking down there, sir. Ma'am.
Just quickly, it comes back to me now. Representative Taylor made a passionate plea about this last year.
That's correct, yes.
I couldn't remember what you had said last year, but we were making the exception for the funeral homes last year.
That's right.
And
It's the same
and I
text.
see that as the case. I just don't see how other creditors, just because we made the exception for funeral home people.
So
How can a credit, go ahead and tell me.
in fairness, this bill does not allow anybody but funeral homes. Okay, that is the black and white text of the bill.
Okay.
I am trying to look ahead, right? I am trying to be a risk assessor here. And that is a risk that I see. It is not an actual fact by this bill or anywhere else at this time.
Oh, okay, so we're making a precedent, so that's what you're saying, that could happen.
That is correct. That is my opinion.
Okay.
Okay.
If I could make a
Yeah.
comment.
Yes, sir, please.
I have actually had a state retiree to go and assign or change some beneficiary to the funeral home. But if I'm not mistaken, under Georgia code, you can't make a funeral home beneficiary on life insurance in the state of Georgia. That law changed once, I think in the early 80s, only for a session, and then it reverted right back. Because funeral homes, there were some funeral homes that were actually going and taking out policies on some very elderly, sick people.
Yep.
And so there's a slippery slope there that, you know, you can do that, but like Mr. Pivin did admit, the original contractor is dead.
Yep.
But that contractor, that insured, told the children about the life insurance. I want it to pay for my funeral. But what's happened now, we have drug addicted people and people who are addicted to other things. They do finally, after a week, we get them to come in to make arrangements on mama. They're not spending the $10,000 that mama wanted on her funeral. They're spending a $2,000 cremation.
Right.
So, you know, that's what you wind up with. In Georgia, the body being quasi-property, and the insured or the person is no longer has any say-so over her body. So, you know, that it gets into a very complicated issue there.
In that we are in a unusual posture, the way they're saying, and I apologize for not getting back to you as we did. I would say before, and this is Senator Williams, before you go forward with, rules, I think is to talk to Ledge Council and get maybe some direction on that, if y'all would be in agreement. Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I mean, I think given the way that it's been presented to us, it is an interesting question. It's kind of one of the more arcane provisions of constitutional law in general. I feel like, just from my opinion, which is worth whatever it's worth, that the bill is probably fine unless Ledge Council says affirmatively, here's an opinion that it is unconstitutional.
And I think this, if we look at the bill, I'm looking at page 216, it says group term life insurance. You're saying it's not group term life insurance, but
I even call it that. We have forms all over the place
Oh,
that
okay,
call
okay,
it group
okay.
term life insurance.
Okay, I'm glad to know that that's
Group
it.
term life insurance.
We call it Gitley.
Okay, okay.
Life insurance is what it's called. That's what they named it.
That's what they name, okay.
And that's what assignments are for, is on life insurance to pay a funeral bill.
I heard someone speak, it says, he that controls the verbiage and the meaning of words controls whatever goes on. Okay, thank you very much. Very good, we're dismissed, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir.